Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, April 16, 2026, time in Texas, about 4:15. If you're ever feeling overwhelmed, it's good to remember who is in charge, and that would be God, and that He knows everything. Because many of the news items that the people in America who are awake have been dealing with since about 2020 are now coming together like pieces in a puzzle, coming together and making the puzzle picture much, much clearer. So some of the things we're going to be hit over the head with now and continuing into the near future. The 2020 coup we saw in the U.S., what's going on with Iran, ETs. And now we're going to begin also seeing in America deep state arrests taking place, while President Trump is acting like a juggler. We see in IRGC no more money. And we're seeing yesterday the U.S. military asking U.S. manufacturers to get on a war foot production schedule. Very likely with, in the near future, U.S. military versus Russia and China. And we have this. Russia is currently being hit by Finland and the Baltic states. So yeah, that's going on. Let's get started. So we have David Nino Rodriguez interviewing, I believe the guy's name is Stuart Swerdlow. He comes from a long family of prominent Soviet Union and KGB family members. He does apparently know a lot of stuff. Talking about now Pope Leo's secret meetings with Obama and other deep state Dems, which is one of the reasons President Trump is hitting back at the Pope. And the reason it's coming out, being alleged that Pope Leo was put in his Pope position as an American, is because his job was to introduce ETs to the world and to present the ET fake Jesus. Now, many Christians are familiar with the concept of ETs from the Bible. This has to do with fallen angels who mated with humans and made the Nephilim. I'm hearing some people say, well, you know, the demons don't have physical bodies. I beg to differ. Yes, demons, once their Nephilim body, that's hybrid, the fallen angel and humans, once that body dies, the demon comes out of that physical body, and because it wasn't created by God, doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to heaven, doesn't go to hell. The demon can only be destroyed. I believe God's war angels can destroy them on the orders of God. But the demon then seeks another human body to go into. The only human bodies the demon then can walk into and take possession of are humans who are not Christians. And then they would procreate, make another hybrid human body, and so perpetuate themselves. These hybrid beings, fallen angel and human, Nephilim do have physical spaceships. They do fly around in space. And it's believed that that Atlas we saw recently was a Nephilim ship, and it's now on the other side of Jupiter, we understand, is now hitting the Earth. NASA is calling them meteors, but they're actually some type of attack projectile aimed at different spots on the Earth, especially in America, to hit the weakest points of existing fault lines. And we know, I reported on that a few weeks ago, meteors over Ohio and Pennsylvania, New York and Texas, and so on. So these projectiles, being called by NASA meteors, are designed to hit the weakest points of U.S. fault lines, and we are seeing an increase in unusual earthquakes in unusual places, stronger. We had a 5.7 off the west coast, and then a 4.7, I believe, on the east coast just in the last 24 hours. We're seeing a swarm in Yellowstone, a swarm in Nevada, and a 5-point-something in Nevada in the last 24 hours, and so on. But Pope Leo's job, working with the deep state, and who has apparently been having secret meetings with the deep state, including Obama, was to present then a Nephilim to the world as being Jesus Christ. So we Christians who regularly communicate directly with God would not be fooled, but much of the world would be. Now, this ET conspiracy, we would say, was also involved in the U.S. presidential coup of 2020, when we saw the vote by the American people overthrown by the deep state, and they put in an actor, JB. So that's going on. But all of this is like a cauldron that's now bubbling up and coming to the surface. And also these war activities we're seeing the U.S. engaging in has to do with nations who were directly involved in the U.S. 2020 coup, including Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, Canada, Russia, China, Serbia, Italy, Germany, plus others. So President Trump has a list. So far, he's hit Venezuela. Now we're doing Iran. Next is Cuba. And don't forget, our number one enemy is China. These hits on Venezuela and Iran are directly impacting, in a negative way, China's economy. So that's going on. And we have this. We have We have, Atlas continues to send projectiles. So there's not going to be a Project BlueBeam. That was going to be the fake ET invasion by the deep state. No Project BlueBeam, because in, I believe, 2017, the deep state's huge projectors were destroyed. And one of the reasons President Trump is putting up the Golden Dome over America Plus is to protect America from these ET attacks. And eventually, the U.S. military, plus other good governments and militaries on Earth, will put around the Earth something called a golden spear to protect the Earth from ETs. And another part of this ET 2020 presidential election saga, and so on, are the missing 10 scientists, I went over that recently, associated with NASA and Los Alamos. And it's coming out that MH370, some years ago, a plane that is said to have disappeared, had on it 20 Chinese scientists who were stealing ET information and other secret U.S. information. And that plane was actually taken over by the U.S. military and taken to Diego Garcia. We do not know what happened to the 20 Chinese scientists who were trying to steal information. So that's going on. And we're hearing this, that the U.S. military currently has military weapons not seen before, not tested before, we believe, in combat on Earth, along the lines of Star Trek technology. We did recently learn about a new technology, ghost murmur, and now we have more details. So it comes out that each individual has a unique heartbeat, more unique than their fingerprints. The CIA and the U.S. military have this tech, ghost murmur, that can locate and track an individual by their unique heartbeat on Earth from a satellite in the sky. And we saw that technology used to locate the missing weapons system officer that went down with the F-15 Strike Eagle in Iran. So yeah, that's an example of this exotic technology. And we're hearing Iran is the largest terrorist nation on Earth. And Israel and the government of Lebanon reached a peace agreement for a 10-day ceasefire. However, Hezbollah, who is not a part of the nation of Lebanon, nor a part of the Lebanese government, but a terrorist group funded and directed by the terrorist nation Iran, said no way. And so I believe this morning Hezbollah put 40 rockets into Israel. So it appears the only way to get rid of Hezbollah in Lebanon is eventually for the U.S. military, most likely, to go in with the IDF and hunt down and take these terrorists out. And we have this, So a lot of things going on. And we have this, we're beginning also to see a deep state arrest associated with the U.S. presidential 2020 coup. And this includes criminal investigations going on, and it's believed this will result from a Florida grand jury bringing indictments against Brennan and Comey for sure. So that's going on. And we have this from Ward Carroll talking about recent hits on the F-15 Strike Eagle in Iran and also an F-35 in southern Iran. So the F-15 Strike Eagle was hit in southwest Iran. We're hearing an F-35 was hit in southern Iran. And that Iran has passive surface-to-air missiles, also called SAMs. And one type is 358 or 359 Or, it's believed, Iran could also have old Soviet missiles, and that would be believable because we know both Russia and China are now supplying Iran with both intel and weapons. And these old Soviet missiles do not have a radar signature, but they may have optical sensors. And this is a key point, if Iran is using these old Soviet missiles, it would require trained Russian troops to launch them. I submit a possibility that these trained Russian troops inside Iran, who could be hitting the U.S. military planes, could be located at the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Reckon? And we have this from Breitbart. So we recently saw Swalwell, a Democrat from California, having to drop out of the governor race in California and also resign from the House of Representatives. And it's being put forth that by Breitbart from a Jesse Waters Fox show that Senator Josh Hawley, Republican Missouri, brought out this information that the hit on both Swalwell was put forth by Nancy Pelosi, who said to, take him down, and that it's coming out. Nancy Pelosi and the other commie Dems knew about Swalwell's sexual assaults on women via an FBI briefing in 2020. And he was also tied to a Chinese spy project, Fang Fang. It demonstrates that the Democrats eat their own. For some reason, Swalwell had become a problem for the Democrat Party. We also saw Tony Gonzalez from Texas also resigning from the House. We have U.S. intel that the Pentagon yesterday, April 15, went to General Motors. General Motors includes Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Stellantis, to ask the General Motors company to go on a war foot basis of production, not only speeding up production, but also allocating part of their manufacturing facilities to making U.S. military vehicles and weapons, prepping for the U.S. military war action against China and Russia. And that information came from the Pentagon. So it appears believable. We have this. We had a tragedy happen in Virginia. The Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, who was involved, he apparently had sexual misconduct allegations against him, was involved in a messy divorce, and last night shot and killed his wife and then turned the gun on himself. Murder-suicide. Tragically, both of their teenage children were in the house. First, they discovered the mother and called 911, and then police came, discovered her, went upstairs, and discovered him. It's just a horrible situation. But he was also a Democrat. I put forth that the Democrat Party eats their own. We have this from J.D. Vance, who's heading up a task force for President Trump to track down fraud, Medicare, Medicaid. And so far, they've discovered in Los Angeles, just one city, significant Medicare, Medicaid fraud associated with 447 hospices just in Los Angeles. I mean, it came out like a month ago that a single city, Los Angeles, had more hospices in that city than is distributed across the U.S. So 447 hospices in Los Angeles, fraud. And this also includes 23 home health care businesses. Total of about $600 million fraud. So that's going on. And we have this from China Focus. Leaked documents in China put forth the allegation that China is providing Iran with satellite data tracking the U.S. military for Iran. Now, we saw some information come out yesterday that China had sold that satellite to Iran. But we have many more sources saying China is operating the satellite and giving the intel to Iran. And we have this, that also associated with the U.S. presidential coup of 2020. DNI Tulsi Gabbard, yesterday, April 16, released 400 pages of declassified information with information about people who were involved in the 2020 election fraud. So that's going on. And we also see information, part of this declassed information ties certain individuals of the CIA to the 2020 presidential coup, plus the fake impeachment information against President Trump in 2019, plus the fake Russia scenario about trying to tie President Trump to Russia. All of that was the result of the deep state, commie Dems, some commie rhinos, Republicans, certain individuals, traitors inside the CIA, who put together false information. And this false information move is also tied to Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. So that's going on. And we have this, that, the CIA was tied to the fake coup in 2020 presidential election. The CIA has been trained to manipulate information for foreign nations, but in this case, the CIA turned their info manipulation skills against the American people and then fed false information to the mainstream media. So that's going on. Yeah. And we have this. Now, the CIA definitely, there's a good part of the CIA, and they were very helpful to the U.S. military with intel regarding Venezuela. Also in rescuing the pilot and the Weasel, the weapons system officer. But some of the CIA have been fired during this second term for President Trump. And we have this, a grand jury in Florida is convening right now, and it's likely they will indict John Brennan and James Comey and others. So we see different parts of the puzzle coming together. We have this from Joshua Phillips, Crossroads. Declassified documents regarding President Trump's impeachment in his first term in 2019 are now leading to the DOJ giving criminal referrals to some Democrats involving Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. So that's going on. And we are hearing this. The Dems are now trying again to impeach or remove President Trump. They don't think they can use Amendment 25, which means that a president is not competent to be in the job. But we're here. Declassified information has come out in March of 2026, so it just came out. And it's bringing much truth into the light. We have this. There was a Pentagon briefing today, April 16, and by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, General Kane, head of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Cooper, head of CENTCOM, who's in charge of the Middle East. So the U.S. military blockade around the Strait of Hormuz has been successful, and so far they've turned back 13 ships wanting to go to or from Iranian ports. And we also know this, that the IRGC is moving around IRGC military assets, plus they have heavy equipment out at the sites that were hit. During Operation Midnight Hammer, they're trying to dig something out. And the U.S. military is currently resting and rearming and is locked and loaded. And we have this. And during this operation in the Middle East, the U.S. military is only using 10% of their force. And we have that Iran, the IRGC, now has 0% Navy power. And we're hearing information from U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that efforts were made at the beginning of President Trump's second term to begin the U.S. Treasury to manipulate money going into and out of Iranian banks to bring their banking system down. That was accomplished in December of 2025. In January of 2026 is when we saw the Iranian people revolt and the IRGC using machine guns to kill their own citizens in the streets of Iran. Now, I have good numbers, but it's up to 60 to 80,000 civilians that were slaughtered by its own government in Iran. So that's going on. But those of you who say, President Trump doesn't have a plan, shut up. The U.S. military has had on their books for years military plans to take Iran down. And as I said at the beginning of President Trump's second term, then began the economic takedown of Iran. So that's going on. And we have this. Yeah, I know much of the Pentagon says much of what American citizens see in mainstream media regarding the U.S. military is unpatriotic garbage or just outright lies. It's very negative coverage. However, we are, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, I thought, brought out a good point. He said that last Sunday he went to church and he heard a message from Mark. This is about Jesus healing on Sunday, and the Pharisees, the fake Christians, the fake Jews, we would say, the group that Jesus said, you call yourself Jews, but you are not, Pharisees, wanted to charge Jesus for healing on Sunday. And they were making plans of how to kill him. And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth was comparing, and I believe accurately, the mainstream media to the Pharisees. I can see the analogy. So we have that going on. And we have this. The U.S., certainly what they did in Venezuela and what they're doing in Iran now, presents to the world a picture of and to American people, historic victory of the U.S. military. And we're seeing this reflected in very good recruitment by the U.S. military in all of their branches. So that's going on. And we have this. Now, I take this to be a move that implies a lot. And the Pentagon is putting this information out. So, we're seeing a combination of CENTCOM, they manage the Middle East, and Indo-Pacific Com. They manage, Asia, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, Indo-Pacific. They are coming together. Their assets are coming together. These are two major divisions of the U.S. military working together to pursue dark fleet vessels. So that's going on. We currently have engaged in the very successful U.S. military blockade, 15 U.S. warships, 10,000 troops. And we have acknowledged in the Middle East 50,000 U.S. military in various locations across the Middle East. But other sources say we're continuing to increase that number. And we have this. The U.S. military does acknowledge that they have new technology weapons not demonstrated to the world before nor used in combat. U.S. military morale is dramatically up, and the U.S. military states that they have unrivaled lethality. So that's going on. And now we have this. Yeah. So we have from the Navy Channel that the U.S. military now is going to sweep the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf area for mines, and they're going to use the USS Chief and the USS Pioneer, which are Avenger-class mine sweepers. And they also will be aided by two ships of the U.S. military, the Tulsa and the Santa Barbara, the Tulsa and the Santa Barbara engage in mine warfare, which means using drones, robot divers, towed sonar arrays to detect mines. And then we've also seen the Harley-class destroyers Peterson and Murphy in that area. And their job is to protect the 4 ships that will be engaged in the mine sweeping. And we have this from U.S. Intel. So it appears that Russia is being hit by drones from NATO nations. Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. No one is pushing back on this story, and this statement is being put forth in a public statement by Russian Shoigu. He was formerly the head of the Russian military, then he was promoted. He's now part of the security force of the Russian government, Shoigu. He's making the public statements accusing Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania of launching drones into Russia. Now Russia is threatening to activate Article 51 of the UN Charter. I'm assuming this has to do with self-defense. So we see NATO. We saw NATO not only declining to help the U.S. against Iran, but we saw NATO positioning itself as a complete block to the U.S., successfully hitting Iran by denying the U.S. use of its own U.S. military bases located in Europe, the UK, Spain, France, Germany, and other locations. So now we see the dingbat NATO nations trying to provoke a war with Russia. President Trump, get us out of NATO. And just because the U.S. is a member of NATO doesn't mean that we have to engage in defending the European pukes. That's in the NATO Charter and Treaty. And we know Article 5 of NATO, if one nation is hit, the other nations come to defend. But the NATO nations that come to defend, that decision is left up to the individual nation. So you European pukes who are trying to activate a war with Russia, believing that you can drag the U.S. in to defend you, if I were you, I would think again. Because the American people now don't want anything to do with NATO. So Europe, NATO, shut up. We're not going to war for you. So that concludes my update. And we can see President Trump acting as a juggler. We have ET information coming out. We have declassified documents showing just how dirty, stinky the Dems are. We have declassified information showing, yes, that 2020 presidential coup involved the Dems, the rhinos, and many nations. And we have now this active military operation going on against Iran. I say it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.